Hi, Ray Pointer here, and today I want to share with you how to use a framework to create a thriving insight community. So I'm going to start with a few contextual items and link it back to the manifesto for insight communities, which we published a little while ago. And then I'm going to dive into the framework, and the framework has got 6 steps. I'm going to go through 5 of these steps, and then you're going to hear from my colleague who's going to take you through how we bring that alive by creating the community. So first of all, the context. What we know from lots of data, for example, the Green Book Grit study, is that communities are the fastest growing new research approach. And by new, I mean things that have really changed over the last 10 years. They're the key to customer centricity. If you want to put the customer at the heart of your organization, you need communities. They're the key to agile approaches because they're always on, because they're pre-recruited, because you've got the deep profiles. You know people's backstory. You can create new projects really quickly, and you can put designers and thinkers and innovators in touch with real customers. They're the key to democratizing insights. You can allow more and more people in your organization to learn things and to access information via communities. But of course, communities need to be productive, cost efficient, and to do that, they have to be engaged. So here is the framework, and we're going to go through this one step at a time, looking at how we systematically create great communities, because great communities don't happen just by chance. The first thing you need to do is to do an audit of the stakeholder needs and start with the needs that are met, because you may find that you can improve the way they're met. You might be able to improve speed, you might be able to improve cost, you might be able to make things easier via the community. But you also need to identify the unmet needs. What is it that people would like to do, but they're not doing? And why are they not doing it? Are they not doing it because it's too expensive? Are they not doing it because it's too much fuss? Are they not doing it because they don't trust the results? You'll need to understand those as well. And then you're going to need to link that to budget and resources. If people are going to find this as a more productive way of doing it, then hopefully they will provide more budget and resources and the size of teams and so on. You need to identify your way of working, the way that you want to work. And for some organizations, that is, we want the agency to do everything. The next option really along is that we want the insight team to do most things. We'll probably ask agencies to help us with some things. And the next stop on that continuum is democratize, where a wide range of people can look for insights themselves. They can create surveys, they can create focus groups, they can pull reports and analyze the information. So we have this first dimension, but we also have the dimension, is it more of a panel, somewhere where you can run surveys, but there is no great community, there's no great co-creation of the future? Or is it more of a community where you're saying to customers, help us co-create the future of our brand, of our organization, of our service? Once you have this two-dimensional spectrum, you can think about where your organization wants to be. And here is one scenario. This organization is saying, we want a combination of agency and insight team. This is sometimes called assisted serve. And we definitely want to be community. We want to be co-creating the future of our brand with our customers. But you might equally say, actually, what we want to do is we want to be able to do surveys, and we want as many people in the organization as possible to be able to do those surveys. Maybe the insights team will do the more advanced ones, but we want most people to be able to do their own, in which case you'd be looking at a space like this. That generates a different community depending on where you are on this space. You've got to think about the sorts of outputs that you're going to deliver. Is it going to be data, or are you going to deliver stories or visualizations? This combines well with sort of tactically, what are they? Are they going to be tables? Or is it dashboards? Or is it recommendations? There are organizations that want data. There are organizations that want dashboards, and there are organizations that actually just want recommendations. So you need to know which combination of those best represents what you want to achieve. What sorts of samples of people are you going to be talking to? So the size of them, but also the characteristics. Are they going to be regular customers, occasional customers, non-customers? Do you want to connect with older people as well as younger people? Do you want to connect with rural people as well as urban people? And then, as well as who do you want to be in the total, what sorts of subgroups? Because the subgroups will define your total community size to a large extent. If you want to be able to compare older men with younger women as data cells, you'll need a certain size. If you want to be able to compare major cities in your country, and you've got maybe 10 major cities, obviously you'll need a much larger total size to get subgroups that are going to be relevant. What balance are you going to have between qualitative and quantitative research? When it comes to analysis, do you really just want to do simple analysis where you're looking at the totals? Or do you want to do sort of standard crosstabs and filters? Or do you want to do advanced statistics like driver analysis and segmentation? And if you do want to do them, how are you going to do them? Are most of your projects standardized, in which case democratization is much more straightforward? Or are they tending to be ad hoc? Do they differ from one project to another? So it's going to be much harder for you to create a democratized system. And how much turnaround speed do you need from the request to the result? This will depend on whether you tend to do more strategic research, in which case the speed is less important, but the depth is going to be really important. Or is it going to be mostly agile, tactical research, in which case the depth may not need to be so much, but the speed will have to be really good. Once you've got that background, you can start looking at the features, because the features are going to help you define the request for proposals. And we recommend using Mosco, dividing all the possible features into must have, should have, could have, and won't have. And that is going to enable you to put a framework together around these. So what survey options do you need? Do you need gamified surveys? Do you need mobile surveys? Do you need complex surveys? Do you need to be able to put logic into the surveys? What sort of analysis do you want inside the package? And what sort of ability to export data for analysis outside the package do you want? What sort of qual do you need? Are you going to do video online focus groups? Are you going to do ethnography type research? Are you going to do online discussions? Do you need post-its? Do you need whiteboards? All of these sorts of things. What about the engagement tools? Are you going to create newsletters? Are you going to have gamified processes and gamification things like points and badges? How are you going to communicate with the members of your community? Is email going to be the way you communicate with your members? Or do you want to be using WhatsApp or WeChat or Facebook Messenger, SMS, these sorts of options? And then the specific level of security you want. Do you want standard security, or do you require end-to-end double encryption with double opt-in, with the data not traveling from one country to another, etc.? So you need to detail all of those features. Seek advice. That's our very strong recommendation at this point. Describe to experts what your needs are, how you work, and the sort of exports that you want to be able to create. And they will be able to say, well, have you thought about this feature? Because there could be features out there which you might want to put into your specification that you're not even aware of. Maybe you haven't realized the latest level of development with eye tracking or with chatbots or with some other technology around that. The integration of social media listening, for example. Then we get to the system selection. You're going to create a request for proposals. You're going to talk to some suppliers. You're going to base that on your Mosco. And probably no, there won't be a single platform that does everything you want. It won't do everything you've said maybe you need, must have. Or if it does, it might be too expensive. So what then happens is you review the must-go. Are there must-haves that could become should-haves? Are there should-haves that could become could-haves? Are there could-haves that you say, you know what, on this iteration, we won't have them? That enables you to refine the specification, and you go back to the people who are bidding to be your supplier, and you can pull that information together and select a system. Once you've done that, you get to stage 6 of our framework, which is actually creating the community. You've done the design work. Now you need to make sure it happens. And I'm going to say 2 things. The first is read the manifesto. If you've not already downloaded a copy of the Potentiates Manifesto for Insight Communities, let us know and we will send you a copy. But secondly, what I'm going to do now is hand the baton over to my colleague, and she will take you through the steps that you need to take in creating a great community. So thanks for listening to me, and listen to the next bit just as much.
Hi everyone, I'm Gwendal, Senior Client Serving Manager at Potentiate. During my 6 years working with Insight Communities, I have helped many clients from different industries, banking, insurance, media, FMCG, transport, and others, to create their communities. So today, I will share the key steps in creating an Insight community. There are 3 key steps when creating a community. First, you should define the value proposition. This means that you need to define what you are going to offer your member, what they will benefit from this experience. This is the concept of a community of interest that we talked about in our previous webinar. You need members to be interested in joining your community. Then you set up your community. It's the actual technical setup of your community. And finally, once your community is set up, you need to bring it to life internally. Your community has to be truly useful to your organization. In other words, the community should answer your stakeholder needs, the ones that you defined at the beginning of the project. The first step when creating a community is to define your value proposition. And to do so, you need to enter 3 questions. The first question is, who will join? This is the base of your community. Who do you want to invite? Which profiles interest you? Building personas of your future members can help you visualize them. Then the second question, what will make them join? You know who you want to invite. Now you need to make them want to join your community. To do so, you need to define what you are going to offer them. You should highlight the benefits they will get from this community. Here, I'm not talking about incentives, but benefits like exclusivity, being a VIP client, having an influence on the brand and its product, and so on. And then what will keep them engaged? This means how are you going to deliver what you promised? It's your engagement plan. For example, if you said members will have an impact on the brand decision, you need to plan regular feedbacks on survey results. You will show they are useful to the organization and illustrate the decision you take with input. Or if you talked about co-creation, you should identify the key projects where the community can be useful for co-creation. Or if you promised exclusivity, you need to be sure you can deliver this by sharing exclusive content or product. Once you have defined your value proposition, you know who you are going to invite and how you are going to keep them engaged, you need to technically set up your committees. Here too, there are 3 tasks and they overlap with each other. Creating a committee has multiple dimensions, technical, creative, legal. So you need to onboard as soon as possible every team that could be useful for the setup. For example, IT, communication, legal, and any other teams that needs to be included. Then, once everyone relevant is involved, you can start designing the committee. Choose the name, design the visual identity, the tone, how you want to address your members, etc. During this, keep in mind your organization constraints, like your branding guidelines, but also your value proposition and your personas. Finally, once the community is created, you can start recruiting members. To do this, you need to identify the recruitment sources available in your organization that you might want to use, like your CRM database, social networks, websites, etc. Then you need to create your invitation message, still with your value proposition and personas in mind. This upstream work on recruitment can be done at the same time as the design of the community. As I said earlier, these tasks overlap, and so you can do them at the same time. Once the recruitment has started, the work is not done. A successful community is a community that is useful and integrated within the organization. And to bring your community to life internally, you need first to define clear processes, especially around a survey briefing. You can create templates to fill in or have a shared research roadmap with the capability to request a project. Another important process is stakeholder feedback and follow-up to understand how the survey results were used, because remember that you want to share feedback with the community members. To be able to follow these processes and send project requests, your stakeholders need to be aware of the community. So you need to promote your community internally, explaining the benefits of such a solution, as well as the way it works. It's actually an ongoing process. It's important to promote your community when it's launched, but it's even more important to regularly remind your stakeholders this solution exists and how it could help them. Some of our clients send out newsletter with the latest insight from the community. Others have monthly meetings or videos like Insight of the Month. Whatever the media you use to promote your community, you need to create processes and prompts to make sure it actually happens. And finally, we don't do all of this just because having direct conversation with your client is great. Don't get me wrong, it is great. But we need to be able to demonstrate the value of your community. And so we need to be able to measure its ROI. ROI measurement is specific to each organization. Some will have market research KPI, like the number of studies done per year with the community. Others will have business KPIs, like significantly faster product development process thanks to the community. But most will have both market research and business KPIs. At Potentiate, we set up with each client a success plan where we define together a set of KPIs to measure ROI and track it over time. And finally, many of our clients set up satisfaction surveys for the stakeholders to track their satisfaction and to check if the community is still answering their needs. If it is not still meeting stakeholder needs, then it is time to re-evaluate the community and see if it needs a redesign. So you now know all the stages to create a community. Now the Verve team will talk about redesigning a community.
Hi everybody, my name's Paul Lawson and I look after new client development at Verve. One of the great things about that role is that I get to have lots of really interesting conversations with prospect and existing clients about the best ways to use communities. And today I'm going to talk to you about the work that we've been doing to redesign the John Lewis Community Panel. Now everybody knows John Lewis, but I think the context here is really important in terms of what we're going to talk about. So the John Lewis Partnership owns and operates two of Britain's best loved retail brands, John Lewis and Waitrose. It was started as a radical idea about a century ago, and the partnership is the largest employee-owned business in the UK and among the largest in the world, with over 80,000 employees who are all partners in the business. Profits that are made are reinvested into the business for customers and for partners. So in October 2020, the John Lewis Partnership announced a 5-year partnership plan. As part of a significant transformation to adapt to changing customer needs, to face into the challenging retail market, and to recover from the repercussions of the pandemic, the ambition of the partnership plan is to fully orientate around the customer and become the UK's go-to brands for customers who want quality, value, and sustainability. So what does all that mean in terms of redesigning the John Lewis community? Well, thinking about the 3 stages that Ray talked about earlier, let's look at audit first. So we've been running the John Lewis community since 2016, using it to deliver great, robust quantitative research alongside rich qualitative insight. And we underpin it all via a method agnostic approach. So activities are selected based on the required outcome rather than a choice of one tool over another. This philosophy has been really key to the success of the community panel. So it's enabled us to work across multiple teams and multiple work streams within John Lewis. The community has been used to support a really broad range of activities. So things like concept testing and creative testing, which I think everybody would recognize as kind of key areas for communities, but also things like exploring and tracking behaviors and attitudes around key events. So Black Friday, Christmas, and the January sales. And we also use it to gather in the moment customer insight on new initiatives by sending members into stores on in-person missions. And more recently, and reflecting the growing status in the business of the community, it's been leveraged as a start point for some high-profile programs. So most recently, we've been supporting a strategic journey to reevaluate the John Lewis brand and the wider proposition, which is a key element of the partnership plan. So the most important thing about all of this, I guess, is that the combined partnership plan of bringing the John Lewis and Waitrose brands much closer together to focus on the customer also needs to be reflected in the way that their insight communities are used and developed going forward. So moving on to the adapt phase. So in terms of adapting the community, there were 5 key elements that we looked at. So first of all, we needed to build on the current focus, which is John Lewis customers. The new community needs to serve the diversity of the partnership. We need to create an asset that covers the core John Lewis and Waitrose customers and their services, but also, can cover other proposition areas like financial services, and can also stretch into potential new territories. In order to do this, we need to build from the current customer base, which is loyal John Lewis customers, and engage everybody. So, including those who are lapsed, or also enabling conversations with non-customers. The third thing is around insight into activation. So while the current community is a great source of insight, knowing it is only half the challenge. We also need to engage stakeholders in the insight. We need to give them the emotional incentive to act on it. So creating a platform for more immersion and more customer closeness is an important development requirement. As is making use of as much data as possible. So moving from a process that's already pretty sophisticated, where we use behavioral data to target and analyze projects, but moving to a more dynamic approach where we create a two-way exchange, which enables us to learn more about customer groups, learn more about what drives behavior, and learn about how we can anticipate and plan for it. And finally, while all of the research has historically been delivered by Verve, giving stakeholders some tools to ask their own questions is also seen as a way to increase the value of the community to the John Lewis partnership. So the adapt phase has revealed lots of really great opportunities for us to kind of go on and develop the community panel. For the relaunch in practice, that means a number of key things. So first of all, it means team. So we're expanding the team, ensuring we have a dedicated expertise across food retail, across innovation, across data science, to supplement the existing John Lewis community and research teams. It means expanding the member profile. So we're building out our member profile. We're ensuring we can deliver on-tap access to customers and to non-customers. So this includes an expanded partnership community. So it includes Waitrose customers, John Lewis customers, but it also includes integrating with our Verve community panel in order to be able to provide that on-tap access to non-customers. We're also developing a two-way data exchange, which is going to enrich the database on both sides and deliver deeper insight into customer journeys and loyalty. We're going to make it easy for stakeholders to run and analyze their own simple qual and quant activities via an assisted self-serve approach. So this will enable them to create questions, share them with community members, view data immediately via dashboards, and also run analysis within the platform. And we're also going to have an increased focus on insight activation. So we're going to enable stakeholders to get closer to customers via a program of both micro and macro immersions. We're also talking to John Lewis about a new digital content distribution approach. So those are all things that are happening right now in terms of the relaunch of the community. Lots and lots of developments that cover team and platform and insight delivery, but all based on a key understanding of what role the community needs to play as the John Lewis partnership roll out their partnership plan. So finally, and outside the framework for developing communities and outside the example that I've shared today, I'd like to encourage you to kind of think about three things, I guess. So the first one is think about what the community panel does as much as what it is. So when you're developing a community for the first time or redeveloping, lots of time is always spent on how it looks, what it does, how members engage, what tools are available, how you'll feed back to them. And that's all great. However, the most important thing is identifying what work you can do through the community that will be better as a result of it being done that way. Because without that, there's no point in starting at all. So what the community does is hugely important. And that links into use cases. So consider the broadest possible set of use cases possible. More use cases equals better ROI. In my experience, most communities, when they get built, always have a certain set of use cases that are kind of planned for them. Things like concept testing, creative testing, customer closeness, all of that sort of stuff. However, it's also my experience that the most successful communities are those that are able to serve the broadest possible set of use cases. And it's also really important to understand that the project types and the project areas and the work streams where community can actually offer a really smart, robust, kind of credible research approach is broadening all the time. There's just more things that you can do with communities than ever before. So make sure you consider as broad a possible set of use cases as possible. And that also links into my final point, which is think about your research ecosystem. So one of the most powerful ways to use communities is to support other programs of work. So how can your community integrate, for example, with your CX program? Asking yourself those questions will kind of help you not only increase the ROI of the community itself, but it's also going to help you increase the ROI of those other research programs and of your entire research output. So 3 things to remember: what the community does, and thinking about a broadest possible set of use case, and also thinking about how your community links in and supports other areas of your research ecosystem. So thanks very much for listening today. I've really enjoyed kind of, sharing this presentation. I'll be available for questions at the end of the session and look forward to taking any of those. Thanks.